just a very short time ago, Great Bear and the discovery that we've made was basically just an idea in the back of my head. And a little bit about myself, Willem said, well, maybe talk about some of your background and talk about the background of the district, because you guys obviously won't know who I am, and many of you won't know Red Lake at all. I'm probably what you'd describe as a quintessential Canadian geologist. So I've been involved in exploration projects all over the world. I've had some very interesting and entertaining adventures doing so. I think other than potentially some expeditionary military personnel in the world, geologists have some of the most interesting stories that they can tell you. And in my case, that ranges from everything from the spine of Alaska up in the middle of the winter to the Himalayan mountains with yaks and horses and an expedition up there to South America, getting lost up on the Puna and having to tie the tires on my truck with rope so we could get out of that area. I mean, lots of entertaining stories. If anybody wants to talk to me afterwards, I'll be at the Great Bear table over there. But the lessons you learn when you're involved in all these exciting remote areas is that if you're going to make money for shareholders, you should try to do it in a region where you have low operating costs and where you have the ability to find stuff like what you're looking at on the picture behind me. So the Red Lake District was a target that we had in our mind, myself and my partner in crime, in this case, Bob Singh. Red Lake is one of the top 3 mining jurisdictions in Canada. It had one of the most profitable gold mines in the world, operated by Goldcorp for many years. And the reason that you have this extreme profitability is that the area has very good infrastructure access. It's got a mature workforce. It's a mining community, but really what drives it is high-grade gold. So Goldcorp was able to run the main Red Lake gold mine as the most profitable mining operation, even though the gold that they were mining was 2 kilometers vertical depth in the earth. So it gives you an idea that obviously you must have the ability to generate large, high-grade gold deposits in this region. So what Bob and I were doing was looking for an asset in this particular district, and there was one that was percolating in the back of our minds for some years. So I remember back about 10 years ago, I was running exploration projects for a promoter named Cal Everett, who's very well known in the Canadian mining finance space, and Vancouver in particular. And he had shown me a project which really stood out because he showed me a long section view of gold mineralization, and it looked very appealing. And at the time, this is 10 years ago, he was saying, look, Chris, I've just been shown this project. It looks like it's 1 million ounces of about 4 grams per ton gold, and it's in the Red Lake area. I thought, that's interesting because I haven't heard about that, and usually in Red Lake you hear about these things. So this Dixie property was sitting in the back of my mind for a long time, and my partner, Bob Singh, who's been working in Red Lake for about 20 years, had happened to see drill core from this project back when it was in active exploration phase. And he remarked at the time that literally there were hundreds of drill holes in this property, most of which had gold, including high-grade gold, and nobody seemed to be putting the picture together. So what we managed to do in 2015, just to fast forward a little bit, we had Great Bear available. It was a shell of a company, and it was looking for an asset, and it had me and Bob. And we found suddenly that this Dixie project was available. So we looked at the data, and it was quite an interesting experience for me because I remembered what Cal had told me. I remembered, Bob was talking about having seen the rock before. And when we looked at it, there was an impossibility, like a paradox in the data. It was either going to be a terrible deposit with really no potential at all, or it was a very big, good, high-grade gold deposit that nobody had understood. And we took a gamble at that time. And the gamble was effectively me taking a gamble because this was 2015. It was hard to raise money, but we knew we had a good prospect in our hands, and we needed to make a down payment on this project with the underlying owner. So having looked at the data and been aware of the project for all these years, I took a loan off my own mortgage, and that was the original down payment for this project. So whenever I invest in a mineral exploration deal or really anything else, it's one of the first things I want to see, is that the guy that's sitting up there trying to convince you that it's a good play or a good opportunity has put their own skin in the game. And a lot of the stories that you were talking about here today, these are gentlemen that have put their own skin in the game, and this is no different for us. So we took a chance, we bought the asset back at that time, and I think what I'd like to be able to show you is that we think this is going to be a gold mine, and we think it's going to be a very good gold mine. But because at the time the geology wasn't understood and it was the depths of the bear market in mining, we managed to pick up this project for about $200,000 Canadian. So if that sinks in, it shows you the opportunity of the bear market. And the opportunity of the bear market is if you're smart with your purchase costs, you can benefit your shareholders a great deal. And I'll just show you how that story is playing out so far. And this is an image, by the way, of high-grade gold that we drilled right near surface. It's an example of some of the jewelry box gold that you can find in Red Lake. That was over 1,600 grams per ton gold at about 100 meters vertical depth. Forward-looking statement. This is why we're here. And these are all images of gold, visible gold, coarse visible gold that we've drilled in drill core from a brand new discovery that we've made called the Hinge Zone. So we'll talk about the Hinge Zone in great detail, and I'll show you by the end of the presentation just how big we think it might be. So a little bit about us in a glance. Effectively, Great Bear owns its projects 100%. So typically in mining properties, you might have divided interest. Maybe you'll own a majority interest. But in our case, we own our projects 100%. And we're very careful when we bought the properties to actually buy out the royalties on the properties as well. So those are future opportunities for Great Bear. Down the road, having a no royalty overhang on the project can be extremely valuable for shareholders. It's a big gold discovery. And what's really important here is that it's right beside the highway in the Red Lake district. And what that means is that the drill costs are really low. So here it costs us about $60 a meter to drill, and about all in, including salaries, assay costs, the whole bit, it's about $170 a meter. And that means we just made an announcement the other day that we were going to expand our drill program to 60,000 meters. So that's literally potentially hundreds of drill holes that we'll be completing this year. But to expand it from the 30,000 meter program that we had before to 60,000 meters, that's only about $5 million in drill expenditure because of the location of this project and those cost savings. And that means the $12 million of cash that we have in the bank right now leaves us with a very substantial sum of money left over after we complete that drilling. And if you think about the additional warrants that are in the company that are owned by management and Mr. Rob McEwen, our biggest shareholder, we have over $20 million of cash on a fully diluted basis. That's on top of a tight share structure. We were very careful with Great Bear to keep the structure as tight as possible as we grew the company. So we only have about 38 million shares issued and outstanding, or about 48 million shares fully diluted. So the goal, the concept in our mind, was to bring this project through resource definition, widespread attention, and a significant valuation, and have that on the back of about a 50 million share structure fully diluted. So that way, if we got into just a fraction, there's precedents, and we can talk about them later, there's precedents in this area of discoveries like this that generate billions of dollars of value for their shareholders, their investors. If you look at something that's even just half of it, $500 million or in something in that range, in our case with our structure, that would be over $10 Canadian a share. I know that sounds radical or it sounds very aggressive, but I would aim to show you that we're optimistic on being able to achieve those kind of values, provided the gold keeps coming out of the ground as it has been. So really, this is going to be one of the biggest drill programs in our industry this year in terms of number of meters drilled and gold intercepts that we produce. And that's very important because with the Goldcorp Newmont merger taking place right now, the main Red Lake gold mine and the peripheral deposits in the Red Lake area are very good candidates for M&A type activity in 2019, 2020, as these assets are sorted out. These are big value assets, and we're going to be positioning ourselves to be an integral part of that process. So what are our goals for the year? Well, effectively drill as much of a resource as is available, and hopefully that's going to be large. I'll show you what that is. Do it while we maintain a tight share structure. We're going to see how much of the value we can capture from some of these big discoveries that have been made in the district historically, and make ourselves a key player in that M&A space. So a little bit of background about who owns Great Bear. Our biggest shareholder is Mr. Rob McEwen, and that's the fellow here on our ownership pie. Now, Rob is a guy that knows Red Lake. Rob was the boss over at Goldcorp during the discovery of what they called the high-grade zone at the main Red Lake gold mine. And then Rob was an investor in previous deals in this district that made him a total of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So Rob knows Red Lake, and we brought in Rob early days on the back of our discovery. I remember we announced the high-grade gold discovery one morning, whatever it was a Wednesday morning, I believe. I was on the phone with Rob an hour, like 1 hour after the news crossed the wires. I was on the phone with him and his upper management team, and by the end of that hour, Mr. McEwen had a $6 million order for Great Bear, of which $4.8 million was his personal money, and $1.2 million was from McEwen Mining. And beside him, beside that placement, that was Mr. McEwen coming in at about $1.45 about 6 months ago. Management put in another $1.5 million beside him because it's an incredible opportunity. And we buy in the placements and we buy in the market alongside our other shareholders. Another fellow that's alongside Mr. McEwen as a shareholder is Mr. Rob Cudney. Rob is another person that's made hundreds of millions of dollars off of his previous discoveries in the Red Lake district. So between those two guys, Rob McEwen was effectively the founder of modern-day Goldcorp. So the discovery at the main Red Lake gold mine ultimately took that company, Goldcorp, from something about the size of a Great Bear to effectively a multi-billion-dollar major mining company. And Rob obviously profited during that process. Rob Cudney was the chair off a company called Gold Eagle Mines, which was taken over based on another high-grade gold discovery in Red Lake about 10 years ago. Before they even got a resource together, that company was taken over for about $1.5 billion. And they were drilling something that was about 800 meters depth to about 2 kilometers vertical depth. We're generating very similar types of gold results to those guys, but our project has gold that goes right to the surface. So it's a little bit of a background of who owns the company. Some of the key guys involved here that you may know, well, we have myself, my partner Bob Singh, who's been involved in Red Lake for a long time. He's an expert computer modeler. We do all of the resource and drill planning work internally. And then there's John Robbins and Jim Paterson. These guys are famous for selling Kaminak gold to Goldcorp about a few years back for about $500 million. The other independent directors are all experienced mining people. Doug Ramshaw, which I'm showing you over here, he's at the conference here today. If you'd like to talk to him, drop by the Great Bear booth. Now, why is Red Lake important? Well, this area here has generated over 30 million ounces of gold produced in 28 different mines. The majority of that is from right here, the Goldcorp Red Lake gold mine. And the area, effectively, that's concentrated gold across about 25 kilometers of strike length. You've generated all of those ounces. Our project, located just southeast of town here, is about 25 kilometers long by itself, and it's located right along the highway that goes into town. This is the power line that runs into town as well. All the gold that I'm going to talk about here comes from this area where it's written Great Bear Resources. So it's about 2 kilometers off the highway. What that means effectively is you have in this area, you have a large mill that's now under capacity. These guys are mining down to 2.5 kilometers vertical depth, and they're running out of high-grade gold. They've got a lot of money invested into this area. There's a sophisticated work source in the area, and they're looking for high-grade ounces to replace what's been mined now over the last 15 years. You have other active mining projects in the district. Effectively, you have, within a 15-minute drive, you have a number of different milling facilities, and you have a number of different gold resources. This area will be a very interesting M&A type target this year as the Goldcorp-Newmont merger progresses. The Dixie project, our flagship Dixie project, is very interesting because this is seismic data that was brought to us by a government geologist about 5 or 6 months ago. And this is a fellow, he's a professor at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver now, and he said, did you know that if you went into Red Lake for the first time and you didn't know where any of the mines were, there's two areas where you'd predict you'd get big gold mines. The first area is here at the main Goldcorp Red Lake mine trend. Again, there'd be over 30 million ounces of gold produced along this trend. The reason is there's a big, deep-seated crustal structure that has allowed gold-bearing fluids to come up to the surface. There's only one other location in the Red Lake district that has that kind of structural plumbing system, as we'd call it, and that's our project, the Dixie project. And you can see the data here. Again, it's not our data, we've just taken it from public sources, but it explains why we're getting so much high-grade gold in the area that we've got it. So the Dixie property lines up very well comparatively from the macroscopic structural context with everything else, with the main mine trend. This is an outline of our project showing geophysics. These big northwest to southeast trending structures, that's that big fault that goes down to the middle of the crust, which is effectively a pump for bringing up the gold-bearing fluids. And the little dots that you see here are the locations projected to surface of where we're drilling our gold right now. Now, in most of the major gold districts of this type in the world, it's not the big faults that have the deposits in them. It's the secondary structures and folds off of them that generate the high-grade gold mineralization. And our project is no different. What does that mean? This is the original zone that we knew about when we got involved in the project. This was discovered by Teck Resources back in the 1980s, and it was worked on by a number of junior companies over the years. Fortunately for us, there was flaws in the historical data. We fixed up that data, and we ended up having very continuous high-grade gold mineralization, and we ended up finding a new zone. But this is what we call the Dixie Limb, the original zone on the project. It had good gold numbers in it, as you can see, but our fifth drill hole on the project 2 years ago was 10 meters of 16 grams per ton gold, including a meter of 130. We did step-out drilling 1.6 kilometers away along the same structure to show the potential size of this thing. And then we drilled very shallow gold mineralization that goes right to surface on the top of this zone as well, to show that it's not just deep-seated gold mineralization, underground mining that would be potential here. There's good opportunity to develop a low-cost starter pit on the top of it as well. This is what that zone looks like in terms of a cross-section. You'd be walking along here at surface, and there's no way to fabricate that sort of continuity. Every drill hole that goes into that zone over 600 meters of strike length and down to a depth of about 450 meters, every drill hole hits gold. And if there's an Achilles heel for gold mineralization in Red Lake, it's usually continuity. There's examples of companies quite recently publishing a meter of 1,000 grams per ton gold, and then immediately beside it, they had no gold at all. There's no drill hole in our zones that doesn't hit mineralization, and it seems to have the best continuity of any deposit in the district. This is the same view of that data, but looking 90 degrees to it, and every drill hole across that 600 meters going down to 400 meters has gold mineralization. We've recently been drilling some of these gaps in the Dixie Limb zone, and we've been getting very nice results from those as well. But this is the discovery that brought Rob McEwen in. We figured out, based on the structural data, that we'd have another gold zone parallel to the first one. It hadn't been drilled by previous operators. They'd grazed certain parts of it, but nobody had made the discovery. And it was because we have geologists that worked underground at the main Red Lake gold mine. They were looking at old drill core from this area, and they saw the same signatures, alteration, same style of gold mineralization that you mine in the high-grade zone underground at Goldcorp. And this is using that data, we made this discovery. These were some of our first holes in that zone. So 22 meters of 19 grams, including 5 of 51, or 7 meters of 68 grams, including a meter of 300 grams. Now, we didn't know the orientation of the zone originally when we put those holes in, so the true thickness here is probably about 10 meters of 26 grams, or 5.5 meters of 68 grams. That's exceptional, given that in Red Lake, the average mining widths are about 0.5 meter to about 2 meters. This is definitely ticking off all the boxes. And then figuring out the true thickness and going down at depth below some of those holes in a long strike, 7 meters of 30 grams. It's just, the results have been phenomenal. This is what it looks like when you drill that material. You just get multiple high-grade quartz veins within the drill holes. Some of them are as small as your little finger, and some of them are as wide as a row of your chairs or even a couple rows of your chairs. But it's a vein swarm that we're defining in this hinge zone, and the strike length of it looks like it's going to be several hundred meters. And these are the kind of results that you generate when you hit multiple parallel high-grade gold veins in a swarm. It's been very exciting. The gold system has been up to over 100 meters or nearly 150 meters wide of repeated high-grade gold veins, and it's very shallow. And I'd like to show this little animation quickly to just show our progress in Great Bear over the last 8 months. This is a very short period of time, and using only one drill rig for the majority of this. What this represents is if you multiply the grade by the width in the drill hole and you plot that on the section where we're drilling, you'll see a dot. And the bigger the dot, the higher the grade. And there would be, this would be looking perpendicular to the gold veins, so gold veins would be in the entire field of view going this way. And this is what was available when we took on the project. So there was half a meter of good grade, sometimes 2 meters of good grade. But this is the progress from July. Our first discovery in August that got Rob McEwen heavily invested. This included those like 10 meters of 26 grams. This was by December, we were expanding the zone even further, and you can see multiple high-grade gold intercepts. By January, we drilled our first bonanza grade, high-grade material. This is only a few months ago. By February, we'd stepped out further and down dip, including some 3 meters of an ounce on some of the step outs. And then just last month, we did aggressive step outs. This was 150 meters away from the other drilling and 400 meters away from the other drilling. And we keep hitting vein swarm, we keep hitting high-grade gold. So what are we gonna do for the remainder of the year? Effectively, we're gonna fill in this triangle area near surface, and we're gonna keep following these gold zones down to depth. By the time we get it down to this level, this will be a very significant zone of mineralization in terms of size and the number of ounces that we know about. This will be a real driver for appreciation, market appreciation, and acknowledgement of what we have here with the project. And very quickly, this is what we're going for conceptually in terms of a comparison. On the left is Goldcorp's high-grade zone. This is a map view looking down 2 kilometers deep in the earth. And what you see, there'd be 2 kilometers of rock removed from above you to get down to this level. You'd see a big fold. You'd see high-grade gold zones on one side, on the other side, and developed along the middle. But the important part is there's nearly 15 million ounces of gold produced out of that mine, which is why, even though it was very deep in the ground, it was so profitable for Goldcorp because it was very high-grade mineralization. But this is only, that's a 200-meter scale bar. That's only about 500 meters by 500 meters. All that gold came out of a very confined area. If you look at our project on the right, this is exactly the same scale of view. This is the Dixie Limb zone that we already know about. This is the new hinge zone that we just found. It's a big fold. There's gold on one side, gold on the other side, and gold zones developing in the middle. It looks very, very similar to what you had here that made Goldcorp into such a big company. The difference being that this is present at surface. And the economic implications of that are very significant. So what we want to show, and this is the last slide, what we want to show is here's a cross-section view from everything that we've drilled so far. It shows you have our original gold zone, the Dixie Limb, the swarm of gold veins that we call the hinge zone, and the central faults and ultramafics that reflect that big deep-seated plumbing system I was talking about. This is the same map at the Red Lake gold mine at the high-grade zone. And you can see they don't have any gold. The red indicates gold zones. They don't have any gold going up to surface. But everything that we've drilled so far would fit into this tiny little box. So what we want to show people by the end of the year, with all this aggressive, this 60,000 meters of drilling that we're doing, is that this is very interesting, and it goes right to surface, and it's fantastic, but we want to say it in the context of the big picture. And if this big picture comparison is accurate, we think we're sitting on top of really a globally significant gold deposit. It's up to the drill bit, and it's up to our geologists to show that that's the case. But it's been a very good start for the company, and I think from the perspective of growth of Great Bear, as well as we've done in the last year, we're really just getting started. And that's it. That's our story.